then we'll do that. All right. There he is.
Hey,
Pablo.
how's it going?
Hello.
Good.
Kevin, I didn't know you were in
Hello.
this region.
Yes, sir. 6
Oh, I
years.
didn't forget it.
6.5
I
years,
forgot. I should say I forgot. I knew
That's
you
all
were
good,
up
man.
in that area, but
Yeah. All good. Good to see you.
yeah, you too, man.
How are the studies going at SC?
Pretty good, man. I'm
Yeah.
about to start gathering data next week,
Yeah.
and I'll be done in May.
That's awesome. In a year or so, you'll do the thing I did this morning, which
What's
was
that?
drop off 5 bins of master's degree and doctoral work books. I was like, qualitative research, dude. I don't need this book anymore.
Yeah,
I
bro.
literally 5 plastic bins I brought to Goodwill today.
Golly. So I left staff yesterday was my last day.
Yeah. Oh, man.
And I was cleaning out my office, and I did at least the master's theology.
Yeah.
Just that, hey, y'all want this? Cause
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I feel you.
What was that like?
Congratulations, your first day. Yeah.
It's been a process of a few months, so I think it wasn't like oh my gosh, 2 weeks later I'm leaving staff, but it was mostly sad.
Yep.
And mostly sad. It was just, and then just realizing, the organization's dope, and of course it has growing pains, but what I will miss is knowing my people and knowing, little things like, oh yeah, it's about to get cold, so Becky Joe's gonna put on a blanket and the heat's gonna go up, which means that Nick's gonna start arguing with her, and that's gonna those relational day-to-day things. I'm such a group-based ministry guy that I need a squad. I need family to do life with. So I mean, we're all still friends, but it's not the day-to-day mission, Yep. So
it changes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
thanks for sharing about
big
that.
leap.
Do you know Aaron was on here?
No, Aaron, nice to meet you.
You as well. Nice to meet you, Pablo.
How do you say your last name?
Wanshura.
Wanshura. Where's that from?
I don't know. I just got married. I don't know where it's from.
From Minnesota.
Yeah.
All right, there it is.
Yeah, my maiden name was even more wild. So I just,
What is it?
I just go with Iafredi. So that started with an I, which always threw people off. And that's Italian. But I think Wanshura is like German or Bohemian. I don't know. I have no idea.
Yeah.
It feels German and Japanese to me. The wand and then the shura.
Oh, yeah, totally. I should maybe know the answer to that, but that's okay.
He's from Minnesota, right? It's
Minnesota. He's from the Twin Cities.
Sweet.
And I live in Traverse City, so it's like the northern part of lower Michigan. So I'm very close.
Okay.
And if you listen closely from time to time, Aaron's husband Dan will pop up on your local NPR station.
No way.
He is an NPR. What is it? What would you call him?
He's the morning edition host for our local NPR station. So each town or city or area has a local NPR affiliate station. And so he does all local Northern Michigan news, but then national NPR will pick up his stories or feature him on different things. They want to pull from all over the US from local reporters and stuff. So he does reporting on lots of different things, and then he hosts morning edition for Northern Michigan. So he's the morning edition host for our local station. So
cool.
Very wild job, and
well,
I think he's more sick of the news than anyone on this call. He's just after this year, I don't know if I can
seriously
I mean, you name it. So
you can't get away.
No, he cannot get away. It's crazy how, there were definitely seasons where it was you're not okay. You can't look like, don't go on your phone after work, like
Mm,
it does have effect on all of us for sure. Like
yeah.
we all had to limit our social media intake or
Yeah.
whatever, and so yeah, that stuff gets to your heart.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, thanks for being
It's
on the
real.
call, Pablo. It's really nice to meet you. And where are you calling
Yeah.
from? Where do you live?
I am just about half a mile outside of Denver on the west side of the city.
Okay,
Yeah, so Denver.
Mhm.
wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
Pablo, there's two others that will join us at some point here, Matt
Yep.
DeHogue and Steve Winkle. When we bumped the time back, then I'm remembering now about Steve, but they both had some things that were happening, but they were going to get on when they can. So
Yeah,
it's all good. We can jump in before they get on.
sure.
They're going to pop in at some point, hopefully.
Yeah.
And what I'd love to hear is a little bit more fleshed out from you about the 3 different phases
Yep.
and some opportunity for us to maybe ask some questions and whatever
Yes.
else you want to share with us. And
Yeah.
full disclosure, we have a couple other organizations that we're engaging with to see what they do as well. We're just the beginning stages.
Great.
Yeah.
Great. Well, first of all, thank you for your flexibility. I don't know if Chris told you, I was on vacation on Pacific time, and when he said an hour behind right now, I was like, yeah, sure, absolutely. And I just didn't realize my calendar wasn't had already updated to West Coast. So sorry about that, and thank you. Second thing, Chris, we don't have to get into this specifically right now, but if another organization that you're working with potentially is cultured enough, let me know, because I am working with them as well at a business partnership level, and we can double down versus not realizing we're having that conversation. So
That is one of
Is
the other.
that what JL's doing now in Philly? Yeah.
mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So his process and my process and the phases are exactly the same. We're either gonna merge in the spring or summer, or we are going to focus my business on 3,000 staff and above organizations, for-profit tech, and his on small to medium-sized businesses, which a region falls into that most of the time.
Yep.
So great. So the 3 phases. So usually, well, I'm glad, first of all, you got Kevin on this team, because he will understand what I'm talking about in a different very personal way. One of the things that is an issue with inclusion diversity work is that they don't have a doctorate style process of what is a research-based data gathering methodology that gives you an actual understanding of reality. We usually go into what are people feeling, what are people thinking. Chris spouts out the top 3 things that are causing an issue. Aaron says, yeah, absolutely, and this other one, and that is all in the inclusion diversity space, biased opinion. Without data, it is uninformed. It is just a perspective that needs to be part of what the data is from a qualitative point of view. But phase 1 does bring that into the process, but it also allows for us to do a online survey, an anonymous online survey that is also been processed through that bias, so that the questions that are asked don't have cultural bias into it, other than US cultural bias, because it's in English. So it is three things. It is 1, the survey, online survey. So everybody's surveyed, and I'll tell you a little bit about that. The second thing is a qualitative process of small groups, 8 to 10 people, 45 minutes. Questions are asked, and it's more a facilitated discussion. then part of the qualitative process is for the project lead, likely me in this situation, to do a one-on-one with Chris, and because leadership forms culture. So I get to juxtapose Chris as a white male from this part of the country with this story and how that has shaped the regional culture and what gaps and bias are there that might be causing DEI issues. And then there's a document analysis of what do you have in place that helps and what do you not have in place that doesn't help DEI sustainability specifically, because what we now know in the science of DEI is 90% of the issue is organizational, and 10% is personal. So it's a weird dynamic where usually we go to Chris, what are you doing that's wrong? But really, especially in Young Life, you're receiving culture from above that is instilled through process, training that you have to go through, etc. And what ends up happening is that the individual is experiencing all that, and they have a belonging score that's I don't belong or I really belong. And if the people that are really belong is white males, and the people that don't belong are white females or whatever the social minority group are, we can really, with all those modalities, approach a pretty comprehensive understanding of climate. So that's generally phase one. And then what it measures is this. I don't know if you all read in the information packet, but the theory that is used to measure everything is cultural intelligence. So you probably already know the personal cultural intelligence assessment, CQ drive, how motivated are people, CQ knowledge, what cultural knowledge do people have, CQ strategy, can they put that into practice, and CQ action. That is what Young Life, being on staff forever, is engaging in. Well, my doctorate is actually taking this theory that has been applied at a personal level to an organizational level. And the organizational science of it does measure leadership at the personal level, and but it measures process and it measures structure as well. So when you think about motivation, strategy, et cetera, it actually divides it up also into training, into motivation, into these 6 things that are on that packet for your reference. But what it also does, and this is what I specifically focused on in my doctorate, is it measures the urgency of the work, because it measures how much, what the intent of employee to stay or to leave in the organization. So it asks some questions about that and about belonging. So then you get to really see and narrow down the data to, oh dang, all of our white women aged this to that have been looking for other jobs. So then your strategy that you create is alongside the most marginalized people groups, the people that are not just like, oh, Erin decided to leave because she's called to something else, versus the question most often is, what organizationally has been preventing Erin, a woman, to feel like she really belongs, therefore she starts to look outside of the organization. So then the strategy that we put together in phase 2 is informed by the urgency. And that's one huge piece in this DEI work that is missing in general out there, in that people start in with training, with race, not trauma informed, not a racial identity development process, gender identity development process. And then you just go to Western knowledge gathering versus transformational process of people in organization that is focused on how quickly do we need to move. So that is big picture phase 1.
Mm-hmm.
Any thoughts?
Is it integrated with Livermore's work then?
It is the same root,
Yeah.
the cultural intelligence science. So CQ motivation, but are leaders motivated, and how has that shaped I have access to this kind of advancement opportunities? You know, so it is the same 4 quadrants at the foundation of the science, and then I add belonging and I add employee intent to leave.
Yep.
And how long does phase 1 typically take?
For a size of region like yours, 8 weeks, 6 to 8 weeks. Any other thoughts or answers? You probably already got the answer to everything after that.
No.
Yeah.
Send the bill.
Not.
No, I mean, and maybe Chris has told you this, Pablo, but we have a high value of CQ. And I think, and as we've talked through it, like we've done a lot of training around it. And it was interesting, like even coming to the assignment team training when I moved here from the West Coast, and they were doing like kind of CQ training. And I remember looking around the room at Timberwolf, I'm like, why are we talking about this? And I was like, oh, they haven't talked about this here yet after being on staff for like 13 years in California. And it was starting, but I think Chris has done a good job of, we've had a lot of conversations, we've had training, we've read books, and, one of the things we're trying to do is like, okay, what's our action step, right? Like, how do we keep people of color and women on staff? Like that's, I think, a struggle with a lot of organizations, but it's, so I think philosophically, like,
yeah,
God, we're all in. It's the practical piece, right? Am I saying that right, Chris and Aaron? Like the real practical.
Yeah, it's sustaining them on staff, but also one of the things I look at is we fit Young Life's general demographics with like 20% of our people are staff of color. That's been true for 20 years in this region. So how do we change that?
Yeah.
Reality. Yep.
Yeah. And the whole 10%, 90%, if you hang out with me long enough, you'll hear me say that a lot in different spaces. And the space here is that 90% of the issue is actually organizational, especially in faith-based spaces that actually at a heart, transformative heart love level want this. But Chris, I'm gonna ask you 2 or 3 questions, and your answer is gonna be no. I don't have it or whatever, right? Well, have you been to a timeline training course on how to do this? No. Do you have a manual on how to actually do this? No. Do you have a tool that actually helps you measure different spaces? No. Do you have, so it is an organizational issue. And just knowing Young Life, and the thing is now being out of Young Life and for the last 3 months consulting with other organizations that I'm finding is this is not a Young Life issue. This is just an organizational issue where the last 20 years of failures in this space have caused just in the last 2 years, Facebook and Google to spend $500 million in 2.5 years and fail. And thank God, literally thank God that I got an opportunity to read about that and see that Young Life, in my biased opinion, has the highest potential for causing long, sustainable change in this work. Because the hardest piece is to change the white male CEO's mind and heart about this work to go away from, I don't want to get sued and I like the business going up and to the right, to that's good, but like, let's humanize this. And people will feel like they belong. They won't want to leave. And then what do you do when you got a good spot is you recruit. And then all of a sudden your region as a business becomes a magnet for racial minorities in your state. You will get to know and network with other networks that are not the current networks that aren't producing more than 20% racial minorities. And you'll have the systems and culture and climate to keep them. Phase 2 is all tools. It is training people up. It is giving you the metrics. And here's why phase 1 is so important. It is actual numbers that you can hold each other accountable to. We are at this metric right now. We will grow by this metric. The assessment has said that these 3 initiatives will cost the biggest ROI in 1 year. And then you get to, Chris, you get to hold everybody in your line of authority responsible to create plans and subplans and subplans. And now DEI becomes part of everybody's responsibility, not just racial minorities or women's responsibility, which ends up being that racial and gender taxation oh, that's Aaron's thing. This is a gender thing. Aaron, what do all the women think? You know, versus here's how everybody is causing racial minorities to stay at 20%. And that's when the game changes, when it's part of your job now.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a good thing, right? Like we'll get people excited and motivated and equipped. That was one, thing that really shocked me. And this is, I just had never known this. Maybe you did, but learning in a learning EDD, Doctor of Education, like how do people learn and achieve things? 100% of how to achieve this or anything we want to achieve, first 50% is motivation. Y'all got it. But the second 50% is I believe that I can do it. It's called self-efficacy. But when you're looking around and you don't believe you can do it because the number one way we learn is modeling, like somebody shows us, and there are no models, then we won't achieve the task because motivation alone is not sustainable over time.
And I think that's the itch we have, is that we're like, we're motivated, but that's kind of like where we find the rub right now, is like, how much longer can we only rely on motivation,
Yeah. Usually after, go ahead, Aaron.
Oh, sorry. And I would say, I feel like what you're talking about is definitely what we're looking for. We've done a lot of the personal growth, and I'm not saying that we're done by any means, but coming at it from two angles, to be able to come at it from the personal, how am I growing in my CQ? How do I have relationships with other people? But then coming from the outside, so inside out and also outside in, like what are the structures that are sustaining these kinds of things that need to change? And so if we can come from the outside in and inside out, I mean,
yep.
That sounds like it's a both and thing.
Yep. And it's crucial because there are some things, like I will tell you right now, there are some discriminatory illegal things that are happening. It's not evil-hearted, it's just happening. And we need to do the systemic work, the structural work, because when you start teaching people about this, they wake up. And if you wake people up to pain and discrimination, they're gonna be angry. And you don't want them angry and with the right to sue. That is not a good combination. You want to foster that psychological safety so people can be angry about things that have been hurtful, but also be able to say, oh my gosh, this region is eons ahead of any other organization I know about because we have this document and this process and this development program and whatnot. And the good thing, I think, in this situation, whether it's just me and my team or just JL and his team or the combination of both, is that I know Young Life and I've got to do this work over the last 5 years in the region I just left. And we have some of those processes and documents, etc. So your region would have to start from scratch. Yet there is this thing that if we don't start from scratch, seems where we're trying to go, then we don't get the buy-in from people in the process and the local regional culture embedded in language and process, etc. So I can't hand you a document because that's just not going to help you out as much as if we go through the process in phase 2. We'll use it as a model, like to save time, but
yeah.
Pablo, where the things that you're talking about, where do you see it working in Young Life? Like who's doing it and why is it working?
So
it's probably.
And what have you done in the region?
Yeah, I mean, it is. So the answer, if you ask 10 different people kind of doing this type of work that are on staff, you're gonna get my region. I would say, I would ask, what year are you in this work? And they're gonna say year 1 through 3. And then I would say, well, then you don't know if it's working because it's not working until it's sustainable in year 5 or 6. And then I would ask the question, is it theory-based or is it just the best you had because you had to do something and you're doing it? Which is like helpful, but that's the hard thing about this work is we're taught to think, especially in the Western culture, linearly, but this work is exponential growth. So it actually has to look like we're digging into the roots for a while and all of a sudden, boom, it just takes off. And that's not Western culture, that's Chinese, Asian culture. But I would say that it is working here in the Front Range. It is research based. It is everything we've done has been research based, evidence based. There's a DEI team of 12 to 14 people now. It is going beyond like you were saying, Aaron, the personal work, and now the next phase that people are about to be trained up in DEI. The next phase is how do we train up committees and volunteers. So it starts with staff because we're in charge. So we have to be equipped to lead this at the area level, but also cross-functionally with regional teams so that area director A doesn't feel like they're isolated and they don't know everything about everything. They actually have access to DEI team that has been equipped and understands some of these frameworks and information. And so they're in phase 2 here. I know that JL has engaged in phase 2 with a few other regions, mostly on the East Coast, and one in Oregon. And I would say those are working. And I have also done a couple other regions in the Pacific Northwest that are now have a pretty well trained team, and they just need to start learning about the tools. So there's quite a few regions that are doing this. It's slow work. It is learning something new, and over time, the thing that is hardest for Young Life, I think, well, for any organization, is to realize that the structure is off for this work to be done, because we start and everybody has 4 hours a month, I don't know. And then all of a sudden we get to, oh, we don't have the depth of capacity time-wise to actually do what it takes. But once we get there, people are motivated, they've seen success, because we will celebrate successes throughout the process, and then the motivation goes into structural change, and that's when you really start to create some long-term things. The thing here in this region, and the 2 in the Pacific Northwest that I'm working with, is that at some point, and we need to start planning for it now, at some point there needs to be a DEI budget and somebody that's at least half-time working with this. Because what it will look like, to give you a long-term picture, is I think regardless of how innovative we are, unless you have a full-time volunteer, I don't know how you're going to do that, but unless you have a full-time volunteer that understands how to do this, it'll look like an ARD devoting half their time or more to leading the DEI team. And usually, you know, you have line of authority, ARD, I coach and mentor some ADs or whatnot, but then a considerable amount of time to lead a group of 12 people. And that DEI team has 4 sub-teams that all have their own priorities. So there's a lot of process there. And what happens is it's like a tidal wave. You start this, and especially with Young Life, people are motivated. It's a heart, love, God issue. People are like, I'm in. Even though it might bring up stuff in them, they're in. So what happens is it becomes like quickly a tall wave, and then you have a lot to manage. And the thing that is really hard is to have all these motivated people that are starting to see change, and then you sit and then you realize you don't have the capacity to continue those things. So what it feels like specifically to women and people of color is, oh, so we've done it the white way, but now that we're doing our way, like we don't have enough people to do it. We're going to continue this white structure, and they'll have the knowledge and language to verbalize that, and that becomes a pretty, not volatile, but just a lot of tension in that. So we want to plan for that at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Know that will happen in some way, shape, or form.
That's good. How long would you say that phase 2 lasts then?
So phase 2 lasts at most a year, but as little as 4 months, So phase 2, we've identified the top 3 things that we should do as far as projects. But before we get to projects, or I guess you could say the first project is putting together a DEI team and training them. That's the biggest thing that phase 2 has. So that, conversation, you all know your people, especially if they have CQ assessments already taken. That's pretty good information. And then it's an invitation of people to come on, and the 4 teams are engagement. So like program, make culture fun. It's data. So you really want those people that are like, man, I'm geeking out over this Excel spreadsheet. And then you have trainers and facilitators they're just built to be in front of people in a different way. And then you have curriculum people that are gonna usually for the first year comb through what you currently have and make it culturally intelligent curriculum. People that love the training space but want to stay behind the scenes. So those are the 4 teams. You invite people into those teams. It usually takes it only takes about depending on how deep we want to go, and that depends on how much knowledge that those people already have. It takes about 4 weeks of 2-hour per week training kind of thing, generally for the whole team, plus some touch-ups on like, all right, the data team needs just some tools and some hour telling you how to actually look up stuff and design surveys, etc. And then after that team is trained, that's the team that now with an inclusive filter looks back at the assessment, and that team should include you 3, by the way. Looks back at the assessment and says, okay, the assessment says this. Is there anything that we're missing? Because we're going to do 3 things over the next year. And phase 2, it can also be divided. Maybe you just need me to train up your DEI team, and then they got it. You're going to take the 3 initiatives and they're going to create an equitable funding system, student staff program, or revamp associate training. I don't know. It's whatever's identified. And I could be with you in that, or you all can do it in-house. You know what I mean? So we would finish phase 1 and then have a conversation about how do you want me to engage, if at all, for phase 2.
Do you have a sense of how much it costs for phase 2?
It's so project based. It's the same hourly rate, and I don't charge hourly because honestly, this is my life.
Yeah.
It's my marriage, it's my kids. And I always end up spending a little more time. So I like just project based. It's actually beneficial for the client for it to be project based versus hour based. And but I will say I have an $8,000 phase 2, very little work, and I have a 6-figure phase 2.
Right.
So that's why I can't tell you exactly.
Yeah.
But if you tell me, I have had a regional director in the South Central division asked me that because it was budget season a month and a half ago, and they're like, I just need a general ballpark. And if you have an idea of the kind of things, and I'm sure you all have some sort of pulse on the things that you want to accomplish, then I could give you a better idea if you email me 3 to 5 things, and I like to a la carte phase 2.
Yeah.
And I'll say I would rank them in this order after the assessment, but right now you can send me those things, and I could give you a range per.
That's good. I don't think we could name those things right now, but yeah, I mean, you know this from just being in Young Life circles, like, okay, how are we going to pay for this too? That's a reality. I look at it, I'm like, I'm not Terry Loprino. I don't have the connections that she has. I wish I was, but I'm not,
Yes.
So even the 11.9, I'm like, where are we going to get that from? We got to go figure that out kind of deal.
Yeah.
So at the other side of it is, you should be paid and paid really well. So I want that to happen as well, no matter if it's us or Google or whatever, so I believe that for sure.
Yeah, thanks for saying that. Well, with this, I know the nonprofit world. So as far as payment structure, we can always work on payment structure.
Right.
Usually, so it takes 2 months for the work, but you don't have to pay me in 2 months. I just have to, if you ask for something different, I just have to look at, all right, how do I make sure I can still pay my mortgage? And then we can like trickle it out as well. Because I don't know, Chris, I'm sure you know this, but I just ran across 6 months ago the term hard to fund region.
Yeah.
I didn't know that was a thing. And that just gave me a whole other equitable funding thinking process, because the 2 regions I have been in were some of the wealthiest 2 regions in the whole country.
Yeah.
So yeah,
that's
I'll
going to
work
be
with you.
true of my own just general opinion is any of them with a metro large city reality. But there's a lot of regions, the Heartland region. I mean,
Yeah.
Iowa and Illinois, no cities,
Woo.
yeah, things like that. So there's a
Yeah,
lot in
that's
between
hard.
that as well. Yep.
Corn and deer. They have diversity in wildlife and crops. That's about what they.
Yeah, and there's wealth in different
Yeah.
pockets of those places.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're in the middle of those extremes, I would say. Yep.
Well, Chris, also if it's ever gonna stop the work, just let me know and we'll figure something out.
Yeah. That's good. Questions that you guys have, Aaron, Kevin?
I mean,
I love it. Yeah, Aaron, go.
Something
Go for it.
This is a guess. Doing phase 1 but not completing phase 2 could maybe be pretty detrimental, like in some ways. I'm just imagining like what it would be like for a minority to be able to define the reality and then to say, but it's too much money, or we can't actually pull this off or be able to change anything about it. Do you want to speak to that for a second, Pablo?
Yeah, I would love to. I love how you were like phrased it in questions when you probably already know.
yeah, I know. It's really just I'm sharing my thoughts. That's
yeah. No, but you're right. It's I've experienced it more than once personally on staff and outside of Young Life. But also it's what research says. You wake people up, like I said earlier, to something that's really hard, and you're giving people a sword. So that sword is sharp, and now you taught them how to use it a little bit. So phase 1 tells you there's pain and where is it. Phase 2 begins to heal that pain. And it feels just like you said. I mean, if you don't do phase 2, and phase 2, like if you don't do it with me, you could still try to do something, and I will leave you, like Kevin, you already know, like you can't just look up some blog somewhere to give you the 7 things to do. You got to go through scholar.google.com, and you got to have research-based methodology. And I believe Kevin can speak into, well, I don't know what we're doing, but if we do it, we're going to do it through research-based methods, and you will be better off than most places. But one of the things, fortunately and unfortunately, that the research says is that it does require an expert guide that could see the pitfalls. And I mean, this is a Young Life leader leading a kid, right? You don't put a high school kid alone with a middle school kid. You have oversight of staff associates or older adults. It's the same thing with this. And in a Christian space, the Holy Spirit doesn't guide to all truth when you are fully ignorant of the space where that truth can come up. And we in the Western world are like, I love Jesus, and that's true. The Holy Spirit guides to all truth. Yes. And then we have intent, and we are praying, and we forget that the Old Testament says, like, I'm tired of your prayers in Amos 5. I want justice and flowing like rivers. And we don't realize that that's an inclusion language, and a centering of the marginalized language. So, Aaron, you're right. And it also requires an expert guide. What I have seen in Young Life in conversations with regional directors that are into phase 2 and that are finally starting to see, oh, this is why guides needed, is that, and this is insider Young Life information, right? Reallocation of training funds is one way that this kind of work can happen. Any training that I do, Chris, you can reallocate $1,000 a year of training, not for winter training people, but for people beyond it, for yourselves. And that's where an equitable reallocation of funds can come from, and time can come from, and the reasoning is easy. Is, Chris, you tell Brett, we're going into this, and I know Brett's all about this, and we are just not equipped as a mission to impact the now. We're working on the later, but we need to impact the now, and I just need to reallocate funds. And I know that becomes a conversation, because now Brett is holding, whoa, hold on, I'm not going to send $30,000 or whatever over to the training department, and that impacts them. And I know that whole piece. Been through that with 3 regions now. Would love to guide you in that if we get there. Because it is crucial, Aaron, you're right.
I mean, I feel like that's just kind of creating a problem that Young Life will have to solve. Like, if $30,000 isn't going to the training department, then they should be hiring you to train their area directors, and then so I just
amen and yes.
But yeah, that if they're not offering that, I think it's an okay problem to create.
Well, it's a pro and con of the region. The region is very agile; they can move quickly, but national and globally, it moves way slower. So it's the same thing over and over again. You, as the regional leads, don't want to get into the issue that we're talking about with national, in that you give information and your ADs and the staff associates want to move quick. And you all know that organizational, transformational, and sustainable change takes time, and you will move slower, which is why the communication is crucial. We're doing phase 1. We have to do phase 2. We'll figure out how to do it. You don't strip hope away from the most marginalized. We're moving this direction. We're not going any other way. We just got to figure it out, because it costs money and time, and it's just, that's where you all get to engage in wisdom.
Worth it. Yeah.
So worth it. Hey, real quick, and I have a 4 p.m. here that I got to hop onto in a sec, but Pablo, I think what you're saying, the research-based stuff is really true. And it's an uphill battle in Young Life, because we talk relationships, and like we mentor, and we do it all with kids, but we give staff manuals or have them read a book, right? And even, in field development, that's still happening, where it's like fighting to have coaching. It's an uphill battle where they're like, let's just give them a manual, and so keep it up. Having a guide is vital. And it's so crazy, because we do that with our staff, with our leaders and with kids, but we just kind of say, and not that we don't support our staff, right? But it's a lot of just, hey, read this and go figure it out. But to have a guide's really vital. So way to go, man.
Yeah.
I got to hop off, guys.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good to see you guys. Take care. Excited to hear how this all shakes out. So we'll be in touch. Thanks, guys.
Kevin.
I think that's it for me. It was great to meet you, Pablo.
Yeah. Yeah, you too. As far as next steps, I just need to know whether you want to pursue some work, and when would be your timeline for starting. And then, you mentioned the finances a couple times, so we can talk around, maybe we don't do 50% down, 50% later. Maybe we do something where, even though I finish your work, the contract says the payment's over 4 or 5 months or something, and that would be fine too.
Yeah, I think we could figure out how to do the way you listed. I just got to figure it out. but
Yep.
yep. That's good. Thanks, Pablo. Appreciate it, man. We'll
Yeah,
get back
man,
to you
good to
soon.
see you. Absolutely. Thank you.
Congrats on day one.
Oh man. Yeah, thank you.
Young Life.
Well, it's really cool that day one has involved some Young Life people like you
There
all.
you go.
So
We can help transition a little bit.
yeah. Yeah.
All right.
If you-
Take care.
Yeah, take care. If you think of anything, feel free to email me.
Will do. Thanks.
All right. See ya, guys.
Bye.
Bye.